Global controls are controls that always perform the same functions regardless of which mode you're in. MXT-Live utilizes several modifiers. Modifiers are buttons that modify the functionality of other controls, similar to the Shift or Control key on your keyboard. The modifiers are Shift, which is the Enter button, Quantize, which is the Swing button, Duplicate, Select, Solo, Mute, and Erase. These 4 buttons here switch between pad modes. They also provide some global functionality as well. When Shift is pressed, pressing the Scene button will switch between session and arrangement views. Pressing the Pattern button will switch between clip and track view. When Erase is held down, pressing the Pattern button will show or hide detail view. The Play button will toggle Live's playback. Also, when Live is playing back, this button functions as a visual metronome. Holding down Shift and pressing Play will toggle the metronome state in Live. The Record button will toggle Session Record if you're in Session view. In Arrangement view, it'll toggle Arrangement Overdub. And in either view, holding down Shift and pressing this button will toggle Arrangement Record. The Erase button we already covered. The Restart button will restart the song. If Shift is pressed, this will trigger Back to Arrange. The Rewind and Fast Forward buttons will rewind or fast forward. If Shift is pressed, these can be used for nudging Live's tempo down or up. The Grid button toggles fixed length recording. This allows you to easily record clips of specific lengths. You can set the fixed recording length by holding down the Grid button and using the jog wheel. Holding down Shift and pressing this button will prepare a new clip slot for recording. To give you an example of fixed length recording, currently the fixed recording length is set at 2 bars. If I press the Record button, this will record a perfect 2-bar clip. The arrow buttons shown in green here will navigate scenes and tracks in Session view. In Arrangement view, they'll navigate tracks in the Insert marker. If Session mode is selected via the Scene button, the functionality of these arrow buttons change, and you can see their LED color changes as well. They'll navigate the Grid selector in Live. The Group A button is only functional when Note mode is selected via the Pad mode button, and it functions like a sustain pedal. The Group D button is not used at all. The Group C button is the Clip Control button. This provides various control over the selected clip. By default, this will launch or stop the clip. If Shift is pressed, this will launch or stop the clip immediately. When Quantize is pressed, this will quantize the clip. When Erase is pressed, this will delete the clip. When Duplicate is pressed, this will duplicate the clip. When Shift and Duplicate are pressed, this will double the length of the clip. When Select is pressed, this will toggle the lock state of the clip. When the clip is locked, all of the functionality in MXT-Live that's related to the selected clip will be locked to this clip. And finally, when Mute is pressed, this will toggle the clip's mute switch. The Group H button is the Track Control button. This provides various control over the selected track. By default, this will toggle the arm state of the track. If the selected track is a group track, holding this button down will fold or unfold the group. When Shift is pressed, this will select the playing clip on the track. When Erase is pressed, this will delete the track. When Duplicate is pressed, this will duplicate the track. When Select is pressed, this will toggle the lock state of the track. When locked, all of the functionality in MXT-Live related to the selected track will be locked to this track. When Solo is pressed, pressing this button quickly will toggle the solo state of the track. Holding this button down will offer momentary control. And finally, when Mute is pressed, pressing this button quickly will toggle the mute state of the track. Holding the button down will offer momentary control. These 3 buttons here select the primary function of the jog wheel. When volume is selected, the jog wheel will control master volume. When Shift is held down, it'll control cue volume. If you press the jog wheel, the display will show the name and value of the parameter that you're controlling. When Swing is selected, the jog wheel will control global quantization. When Shift is pressed, it'll control record quantization. When Tempo is selected, the jog wheel will control tempo in 1 BPM increments. When Shift is pressed, it'll control tempo in 1/10 of a BPM increments. The Swing button has some additional functionality. When it's held down, The first three encoders can be used for adjusting the quantization settings. These settings determine how quantization will work when quantizing clips or notes. The back button will trigger undo. The forward button will trigger redo. The functionality of the note repeat button changes depending on which pad mode is selected, but it also has global functionality as well. When shift is pressed, it'll trigger tap tempo. The display and the 8 buttons above it perform different functionality depending on which mode is selected. By default, these will perform functions and display information related to encoder modes. When the control button is turned on, these will display information and perform functions related to pad modes. The step button is only accessible when note mode is selected via the pad mode button. This will toggle the step sequencer on and off. The functionality of the browse, sampling, and all buttons changes depending on which encoder mode is selected. By default, the auto write button will toggle automation on and off. If automation has been overridden, holding down Shift and pressing this button will re-enable the automation. When erase is held down, pressing this button will clear all the automation from the current clip.